He screamed at my 15-year-old niece to cover up right there in front of a crowd of kids by the pool. She clutched a damp towel to her chest, trembling while this so-called HOA officer blocked the gate like he was some kind of cop. But he wasn't. He was a fraud in a uniform, a bully with a fake badge. And in that moment, watching her shrink under his voice, I knew something inside me had snapped. They thought they could humiliate her, silence me, and get away with it. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I'm Daniel Greer, civil rights attorney, guardian to a 15-year-old who just wanted to swim on a summer afternoon. Brookhaven Trails looked like the perfect neighborhood on the outside rows of manicured lawns. Identical mailboxes, porch swings that creaked like they were telling stories. But behind all that neatness sat a homeowners association drunk on its own power. And at the top of that pyramid was Colleen Merrick, the president, the kind of woman who smiled for newsletters but ruled with ironclad fines and fear. If you've ever lived under a Karen with a title, you already know the type. The man at the pool that day, Officer Brian Hensley, wasn't law enforcement. He wasn't licensed security. He was just their enforcer, and he made my niece stand there half wet, half terrified, while he barked about modesty like some kind of moral police. She didn't cry, she froze. And when I stepped up and told him he had no authority, he smirked and told me to take it up with the board. That smirk. I'll never forget it. It was the face of someone who thinks no one will ever challenge them. Lacey rode home in silence that night, her towel still clutched like armor. The porch swing my sister once painted was where we sat, and when she finally whispered, "He made me stand there while everyone watched," something inside me broke. The pool that held birthday parties and summer laughter had turned into a place of shame. The very next morning, the HOA delivered their answer, a glossy envelope with a $500 fine. They accused me of disruptive behavior and failure to enforce the dress code for minors. No mention of Hensley, no acknowledgement of what he did, just a fine designed to bury us under paperwork before we could fight back. I started calling neighbors. Quiet conversations turned into quiet confessions. A teenage boy forced to sit out because his shirt had a slogan. A girl sent home because her swimsuit showed her shoulders. Another kid humiliated for wearing his trunks too low. Everyone whispered the same words, strict, creepy, too much. But none of them had filed a thing. They were scared. That's how HOA bullies survive, by feeding on silence. By noon I had 4 pages of notes. But I also had a problem. The board doubled down, sending another violation, inventing new rules that didn't even exist in the bylaws. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hate to admit. I felt doubt. Lacey avoided the pool, avoided even walking past it. She said flatly, "I'm not going back there." And I sat on that porch swing wondering if I was making it worse. Maybe fighting would only drag her deeper into it. Maybe I was the one keeping the wound open. That's the moment I almost folded. When you start asking yourself, am I the problem here? Am I making this about me instead of her? It's a sick feeling, like quicksand pulling you down. And if you've ever been pushed by authority until you second-guess yourself, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Then came the twist. Marlene Ortiz, the HOA treasurer, soft-spoken, always the one keeping her head down, approached me quietly. She admitted she'd been at the pool that day. She admitted she saw it. And she handed me a folded paper from the board's agenda session. It authorized security to physically relocate minors for dress code enforcement. Read that again. They wrote into policy the right to physically move children. My stomach turned cold. That was my spark. I dug deeper and uncovered the truth. The HOA hadn't even hired a real security firm. They funneled money into a shell company called Merrick Property Compliance Services, Colleen's cousin's business. No licenses, no credentials, no liability coverage. They handed a fake badge to a man like Hensley and let him loose on our kids. Still, all of this meant nothing if I couldn't prove intent. I needed more. And that's when Lacey, my quiet, wounded niece, looked me in the eye and said, "Use my name. File the complaint. I don't want to be scared to swim." That was the moment I stopped questioning myself. If she had the courage to stand up, how could I not? So I filed. Every violation letter, every contract, every secret agenda note went straight to state regulators under a clause that protects minors. And while the board was busy sending me more fines, retaliation notices, even stationing guards outside my house just to intimidate me, the real storm was already on its way. But I didn't just wait for the state. I went on offense. I reserved a neutral event hall outside HOA control and invited parents quietly one by one. No cameras, no slogans, just neighbors. When the night came, I stood with a binder full of evidence and said, "This isn't rebellion, it's fact." Then I laid it all out, the fake contracts, the fabricated fines, the humiliation of children. At first, silence. You could feel the weight of fear pressing down. Then one mother stood and said her daughter had stopped going to the pool last year, never telling her why. Another man described how his grandson was shamed for wearing shorts too low. And then Marlene, shaking but steady, raised her hand and confessed, "I was part of the board. I saw the directives. I didn't stop them. I regret that more than anything." That broke the dam. The room turned. People weren't whispering anymore. They were angry. And in that moment, Colleen's carefully built wall of fear cracked wide open. The very next morning, plainclothes investigators rolled up in unmarked cars. They propped open the glass doors of the HOA office and started hauling file cabinets into the sun. No warnings, no polite calls, just a surgical dismantling. Residents gathered quietly on the sidewalk, watching the empire fall piece by piece. Colleen arrived in her pearl-white SUV sunglasses sharp enough to cut glass. She tried to breeze past, waving her phone like a weapon. An investigator stopped her, handed her a document, and just like that, you could see it hit her. The rules didn't belong to her anymore. She wasn't the queen of this neighborhood. She was just another name on a file. Marlene stepped forward from the crowd, clutching the originals she'd given me. She handed them to the investigators without hesitation. And that was it. Proof not only of negligence, but of suppression. Colleen's face tightened, her arms folded across her chest, but it was over. Her borrowed authority, her silence, her intimidation, all gone in broad daylight. By the end of that week, the letter arrived. Merrick Property Compliance Services was disqualified from operating in the state, and Colleen Merrick removed as president of the Brookhaven Trails HOA. Just like that. Do you know what silence costs? It costs your dignity, your safety, sometimes even your children's sense of belonging. They counted on us staying quiet. They counted on neighbors shrugging and saying, "Not worth the trouble." But the moment you break that silence, their power collapses. So let me ask you, would you have filed the complaint knowing your child's name would be on it? Would you risk the fines, the intimidation, the cold stares from your neighbors? Or would you let it slide just to keep the peace? Drop your answer below, because I'll tell you this much. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of justice.